And so we have Luke because actually to be able to have this future, right, we need to manage APIs better, right? And we need to democratize the ability to manage APIs. So yeah, we have Luke coming up with us like about Supercharge digital democracy with API first approach. So yeah, we can have the...
All right. Well, what a privilege following Mike Amundsen. So great job. And as well as a lot of the other great speakers here today, I'd like to tie some things together, focusing on what is API first. I think many of you know that, but then how does the tooling enable that? And then what about design first? And there are differences between the two. And thank you very much. Just click it. Perfect. So again, Luke Lipan, and I'm on the sales side. So what I typically do is talk with developers, architects, and say, okay, what's the business purpose, right? It starts there. Who else is involved? We're going to talk a lot about that. And it's just great to see everybody here. So let's kick it off. So like I said, what is API first and why? And what are the ramifications of being code first, right? And those are the developer inclinations. That's what makes them so great. That's what makes them such a great asset. So how do we optimize that? How do we tap into that? How do we integrate the business logic and the purpose? A lot of great speakers earlier talking about starting with the domain, right? Or data governance for agility and adaptability. Taxonomy, that's also articulating what are the right attributes of an API. We're going to talk about all of that. There's so much to do with that API formula, right? And then talking about composable services, right? How are we now capitalizing on the pub sub models and the asynchronous feeds along with our stateless and stateful? So design first, business benefits, and innovation advantages, because at the end of the day, what is IT's real mission, right? To enable innovation and competitive advantage for the business. So easier said than done, and I think everybody in this room knows exactly what I'm talking about. So how do we make it better, and how do we coordinate that collaboration? First of all, APIs, I think, they're a first-class citizen, right? But they're a strategic opportunity. And just to consider what is today, and then what do we need tomorrow, and how do we see around the corner, right, of the second year, the third year of our business? What's our strategic opportunity? And how does IT drive that as an engine for the business? Well, what about the consumer? What's the user experience? And we're talking internal developers, right? That skill set is valuable. People are the power of an organization. So how do you make them happy? How do you retain them? And of course, your external partners as well. How do you beat their expectations? How do you exceed their perception of you or improve it? So all of these things, right, is why API first. It's really your storefront. You're merchandising your data, and the value of that data is upon consumption. Now, how do we iterate based on proper feedback and collaboration from the end users, whether internal or external, right? All of this requires a platform and tooling. And then we talk about time to value. We hear stories all the time. It took 6 months, still not in production, not with our product, mind you. But how do we get there faster, right? And the shift left, how do we quickly mock test an API design that's incorporating the right logic? So this is what API first and API design is a little bit about. And you know what? Every conference should have a brand new acronym. So I do want to introduce a new acronym. So it's an official API Days acronym. It's API as a business, right? APIs are your business. It's your service. It's what everything experiences, right? How many times, who has kids and the internet is down because Amazon didn't load in 20 milliseconds, right? So that's what we're talking. That's your brand. That's your experience. So that's why API first is so important. Now, let's think beyond just the resiliency, the scalability, the performance, and the scale, and let's think about the opportunities of premium APIs. People talk about monetization. Okay, well, what does that mean? Billing per call? That's kind of nickel and dimey. What about enriching your service so you can justify that price increase? And your customer would be happy to pay for it because it has the different attributes to feed the different KPIs so they can drive their business better, or they can know what business value you're delivering to them. So these are some of the opportunities. It depends on your business strategy. It depends on where you are within yours, within your ecosystem, with whether it be third parties. We talk to people all the time about, well, it's hard to onboard a third party. It takes 6 months, and the benchmark's 3 months. Well, what if we could do that faster, right? And how do you do that faster? So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then it's about competitive differentiation as well as the edge. Now, we do happen to be an open source leader, okay? Our product is downloaded and pulled down over 300,000 times a month globally, right? So that's fantastic. We have API management and access management. We're different because we sell security. We provide security, not just access management, but also threat protection. So we all know that DevOps is great, but it's really DevSecOps is what we need to enable, what we need to drive. And at the end of the day, a software platform is really productivity and collaboration. There's a lot of functionality and key capabilities, but it has to serve that purpose to empower the people that need it. So modernizing, securing, productizing, that's another word for monetization, right? How do I really industrialize this process? Again, I love following composable services because, again, we have the RESTful, JSON. We love REST, JSON, SOAP, but we also love Kafka, Kinesis, MQTT, and webhooks. And that's what is happening. So let's talk about code first. Everybody likes to code, and it could be the same language. It'll always be in a different way. Nobody likes to document, right? And there are some pitfalls, and there's some trials and tribulations along the way. And so I think we all remember maybe playing Oregon Trail or Oregon Trail, right? But custom code is important, right? It's quick, it's one-off. Maybe it tests a prototype. Maybe it tests a hypothesis or a proof of value. But now, how do we harness that? We learn from that. We iterate. You know, technologists are scientists in so many ways. So how do you iterate, refine, and produce that? Well, the code first, of course, we have no documentation, right? It was done, so we got to pull back, kind of restart, and go back in time and redo, right? That's a lot of cost, right? Developers are expensive. Time is expensive. There's opportunity costs involved. And if you don't get it right, you got this guy peeking over your cube saying, yeah, that's great, but there's one more thing, right? Or can you come in over the weekend? And then you have this slower pace of market. And then you have the business saying, why is it taking so long? Why is it costing so much? Why are we behind? Nobody likes those questions. We love to help you solve that or avoid it altogether. That's what's important. So turning over that, getting through that, and then let's not forget about the security aspect, right? We all know APIs in the edge are most often unsecured, right? And the most commonly attacked vector in the market, right? We also know, this is Gartner and Forrester, that B2B transactions will be at least 50% in real time, right? So how do you account for that? And of course, the service mesh, the integration, you have legacy, you need to interoperate, you have a lot of challenges, and yet you need to go at scale with reliability. So then we all know that meme, you know, where it's DevOps problem, right? So if we're coding, we've got our SRE teams, our observability teams, they're chasing, they're trying to reduce that MTTX. And then when they finally catch it, they're like questioning life choices, right? So let's face it. So now you're going code first to API first, but it's really the design first. And there's a couple of key elements. And no, we're not talking about Picasso design, okay? So you don't have to be good at drawing, not at all. But if you look at code first, you're looking at, okay, I got an email from the business partner, and I think I know what it is. We all know the telephone game and how things can get lost in translation. And then I'll code. That's a costly process. And then I'm going to build up the documentation, which is probably built on the wrong code. And then I'm going to start harnessing my API management and building out my platform. Now, with design first, it includes more collaboration with the key stakeholders. Okay, your line of business, your key liaisons that, let's call them the SMEs of that domain, of that product, of that initiative. And you get in a room, and it would be nice to have a tool that helps you visualize it in a very simple, abstract way, powered by a designer, right, and a developer. And you're building that design. And while you're building that design, it's generating the code in a standard way that's also documented. That's what we believe in, and that's what we do. and then you're coding for that application, right? A little bit of a change in the process. And if we go further, you're looking at including the right people. So you have the business, you have the developer, you have the end consumer even, right? They told you, hey, look, I'm a big recipient of your data. I would love it if you could add these 3 attributes. I know I didn't tell you. Well, how agile and adaptable can you be, right? And now you're pushing it through to a quick approval process after doing some mock testing, and boom, now you're in front-end development. Your developers are happy. One of my favorite quotes from one of our customers, man, we just actually have fun using your tool. That's a great compliment. So what does that do? That gets everybody excited. So just a quick summary, code first versus design first. If you weren't paying attention, the TLDR world, you know, it's a nice haircut. You could tell that I admire a lot of nice haircuts. But on the guy on the right, you know, he designed first. He even has time for an earring, right? Kind of like his jacket, too. So why does design first matter? We all know it's hard, right? Hard to collaborate, hard to talk through, hard to understand, and hard to translate. Literally, you need a translation device to talk about, okay, the business purpose. How do we code with precision? What's the in-between, right? How is it product driven? What's the opportunity? Does it present a new monetization opportunity, a new revenue stream? A new thing that, let's say, the business relationship side can bring to their customers and be very happy. Maybe they're dealing with a customer satisfaction issue. How do I turn that around? APIs. That's your storefront. That's your merchandise. When we walk into Target or Walmart or whatever store, how excited are you when they changed up where everything is? You're like, I thought the milk was here, now it's over there. They did that for a reason, right? They re-merchandised it because they did the analytics. It's a lot similar to your data, right? What's the traffic flow? What's the performance? What's the health metrics? Obviously through the monitoring, the iterations. So you have the site reliability engineers, the observability teams, but if the connective tissue is tied, thanks to the design process with the business, everybody will be happy, and hopefully ends in high fives. So really, this is a snapshot of our API designer, right? In the middle of the design process, you bake in security, not only authentication, but it could be data masking, it could be bot detection, it could be insider threat, it could be GeoIP, right? And we will have a workshop just following this over at Hub 3, led by Devin Tharp, so please feel free to stop by that. Also, stop by our booth. We're going to be here for the next day or so, and really have had some exciting conversations, talking through opportunities, answering your big questions. Not a lot of people have heard of us, right? But here we are, and we'd love to teach you more about it. What we are finding is the time to market. Typically, we're half the cost and half the time to market. Lower development costs all in all. Happy developers, people that love the product and can extend the product. So we do no code, low code, but we love code. We just want you to do the cool code, not the mundane code. Back to the dog, right? Chasing its tail. So again, it's about business value. How do you align to the business? Well, you need a certain platform to help you do that. And that's what we were talking about this whole time. So it was certainly a pleasure. Love to open it up to any questions, and I just want to thank you all.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a first question. Like the term API first is used for architecture most of the time, but at Apidays, I think a lot of people have claimed the API first business in a sense that like you go into the business case first, and then you revert to an API and everything. So is this also what you claim with that idea? Your API as your service
as a
product?
Business.
API as a business,
yeah.
right? You know.
APIB.
APIB. APIB.
We're working out the kinks here.
Yeah, we're working. But
it's what's the business purpose? Like, what's the customer experience? And you usually need to have somebody that can translate that. And then the lights can come off. The worst thing that everybody experiences is that disconnect, right? Or the loss of translation, or the incomplete picture from the business aspect. Are you going to get it perfect the first time? Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. There is an iteration. That's where the standardization, like the auto documentation, is very, very important, right? So you're not gonna, you wanna measure 3 times and then cut once, but you know what? You might have to recut it, right? And it does happen, but great question.
Do you have any other question about this aspect here? Who has implemented APIhub?
So does everybody like the new acronym? API as a business? Good.
Yeah, you should copyright it, right? Yeah, we have a question here.
Hi. So I love the idea that you have to design first before you can even start programming it or get to the nitty-gritty. But with that thinking, and a lot of coder and developer gets into that problem of you're designing without understanding what are the needs of the customer sometime, because your designers are looking at something really beautiful or what the attention that they're going to get and how that's going to return a value, and it's a monetary value at all times. Where coders are thinking of how is it going to function. And so how do you tell a designer to create something's beautiful, gets you the same return with function in mind, where it can constantly evolve and you don't have to run into that issue of developer always fighting with a designer to create something that they really want or they could really deliver.
Well, think of that designer as the translation mechanism for the developer. The designer is the developer, which they know they can code underneath the hood, right? But it's their translator. Because so many times it's like, well, if I really go down, I'm going to go deep diving, and they're swimming in a kiddie pool, right? Let's just, I mean, it's a brutal analogy, but that's true. Their world is different, but they also bring, well, you know what, the customer is just, complaining about X, Y, and Z. Oh, and you know what, I think this is what it means. It just drives that collaboration. It's just that process. It's going to the gym, doing a couple of reps as a pod, right, a decision pod for that domain or service. But and thank you for picking up the design. No, it's not an artist. It's the developer. But the designer helps them articulate or say, is this really what you want? Are you sure? Sign off, right? Okay, well, this is what I gave you. And that's what we agreed on. I could certainly make adjustments, a third party even. Oh, if I could have certain attributes, I could allocate that to a cost center and we could drive more consumptive allocations. That'd be awesome. Everybody wants to do it. It's hard because the data's not there. How do we add those different metrics, those different hooks?
Yep.
That could be the magic. That could be the advantage. So thanks for the question. Great question.
Hey, great presentation.
Thank you.
This is something close to my heart. So I have a question on, I agree with the concept, right? Design first. You bring your stakeholders together, you come up with a design, you push it out the door. But I struggle with manageability of this process because stakeholders change, their thoughts change. So how do you see the scale in long term?
That's a great question. And I liked your presentation, by the way, too. Versioning, right? So let's create a standard. And I love the taxonomy talk by the gentleman from Discover Services, Financial Services. So if it's intelligently designed up front, then we can clone and save as and version and say, okay, well, at least we have a reference point. Let's go back to the well. Let's go back to the documentation, because you're right. The biggest thing when you're trying to drive consensus, there's churn, brain drain. Now what? At least we have the documentation, and it's a standard set of documentation. It should be up to date, right? It wasn't handwritten, because that's usually never written, right? Handwritten equals barely written, yeah? So that's, again, perfection, don't let it be the enemy of good. Go back to that documentation. At least you have kind of like that metadata to go back to, and then iterate. Maybe save the old version. Maybe that's still fine for certain uses, but now, and we all know we're always iterating, we're always innovating, so how do we do it faster? So that was a great question. Thank you. Yeah, the versioning, the lineage, I didn't even tap into that. That's also a key thing for the platform with questions we get all the time. Yeah, thank you.
So maybe a last question on my side. Did you see like business owners or product owners taking the designer and designing APIs for tech teams without any help. And these APIs have gone in production. Like, did you see that happening or no? This is mostly for prototyping, for engaging the discussion with the tech teams. And so we'll finally go beyond and finally design better, like, you know.
I don't think, we work with a lot of product owners or program owners, and they can have a crack at it, but that designer is creating the contract. It's creating the document.
Yeah.
So the developer is the end-all designer at the end of the day, but others can contribute. But who really owns it, right? But again, it's that translation mechanism,
The
which is
interface,
important.
right?
So how can we collaborate? We're speaking different languages, but now we have that simple, and it's a very simple mind map, right? But everybody can get it, and it's generating that Swagger file. You can quickly test it. Back to a great question, is it going to be performant? Is it going to have the right capabilities? Can I design composable services with that, right? So how do you do that? You need tools in the shed, and that's basically, the designer is only the first part of it. Then you get into the flow designer, and actually Devin's going to show that, how you actually bake into the security protocols. I forgot to talk about security. If security is not there, well, does everybody know our compliance regulations? Well, I don't know. Who do we need to ask? And right? How do you incorporate that in? Let's make sure that we get this. Oh, we've got to go to AppSec. What if AppSec was involved in the beginning? How quickly is that? Not 2 weeks anymore, right? Hopefully maybe 2 days. So that's where we get time to value in 30 to 60 days.
Okay, and that generates an open API document, right? You know, Swagger is the old name. Now I agree with you. A lot of people still call it Swagger. The name is cool, right? So that's the reason, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the name, we all know what it refers to. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for
My
being
pleasure.
there with us.
Thank
Yeah.